From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. Hey, James, how are you today?
Doing great, Steve, and yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm glad we're back to talk about something that really came out of a conversation that we just had with Larry in our past episode, and we'll welcome Larry Darling back from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Welcome back, Larry.
Hi, thanks.
And as we mentioned in our last episode, if you haven't listened to it yet, episode 79, Larry's also a crew member with the AV SuperFriends, and which is another podcast that speaks to the not only the AV industry, but also higher ed, which is tie-in where Larry and James connected primarily. But so check that out. And one of the, we had a conversation off air, which I think was really interesting, is that Larry was talking about his background and how he started out as a programmer and how he really always ties back to that. So Larry, I'll let you kind of give us a little bit of background there.
Well, sure. The story came up because I was explaining why I still listen to the show, even though I hardly get to program anymore. It's just not something that's part of my job description, but it's still like, I still consider myself a programmer. And so going back to my history, I spent a couple years as an installer. And then at the time, my commercial integrator was outsourcing all their programming. They saw that I was picking up some of it, so they offered to let me learn and become the programmer. And I spent a couple years doing that. Then the need arose to have more engineering in-house. And so it was a natural transition to take me from the programming side to programming and engineering. And eventually I was doing 99% engineering and very little, if any, programming anymore. But I never let them take the programming off my business card. I mean, everywhere I've been since then, I kept like programming as part of my job description and everything else, just because I still consider myself to be a programmer. And I think it's just, I found so much value in the way it teaches you to look at systems, to troubleshoot, to service, to design, that I never really wanted to give that part of the job up. Plus, I always thought it was the most fun of any of the positions I've had. It's the hardest to raise a family with and do everything else, but from, just pure fun, programming's a blast.
That's really cool. And I bet you that a lot of other people would relate to that. I know Tim Albright talks about that too, often on AV Week, where he still finds his connection to AV through programming and control, and he dabbled in programming. And he'll always say that there's more people that are better than him, but he feels passionate about it and always enjoyed that part of the industry the most. James, you're kind of in a similar situation where programming has been your mainstay for some time, and with your recent move, you've been doing more management. Do you feel that same type of connection, and can maybe talk about why?
Oh yeah, as Larry mentioned, I don't think you'll ever want to get away from programming. It's definitely a connection. It's that it's almost like, I'm trying how to explain. It's, being able to take multiple equipment and make them talk seamlessly, or as my coworker and I used to say, make it blow smoke. Like that was pretty cool. It's like the fruit of your labor. Like, you go and do a pretty rack install, no one really sees it. And, you hang a projector, great, all that stuff. But if you can program a cool system and have someone come in and hit a button and go, whoa, everything works, your fruit, your labor is there. And yes, it's not viewable. Like we talked about that earlier. Like it's behind the scenes things, but it's there, and it's something that's used constantly. I mean, we all use programming every day in our lives, our phones, our computers, everywhere. It's there in our face. So I definitely think there's a joy there. And as moving more into a management role, it's definitely hard. So that's why I have side projects where I work on things on my own. But I need to be able to trust my team, because I do trust my team to do their job and to program and not me tell them how to do it. And like when I was leaving my old school and I was offloading my knowledge to the guys who were taking over my role, I told them, I was like, look, you're going to look at my code, go, man, he was an idiot. We should do it this way. I'm like, you should be doing that because I am an idiot. Just like I did the guy's code I did before me. Where I looked at it and go, he's an idiot. We should be doing it this way. You involve, you improve. But again, I don't take any offense to that. You want to share your knowledge to other programmers, let them go up. And as Larry said, you get to know the full inner workings of the system. So you can tell how a system is supposed to work and go from there.
One of the things that I thought was interesting, and I would agree, I think that programmers, they're really the ones that have to know a little bit about a lot of things in a system. You have to know not only how the system has to work, but how to talk to the different devices, what each of the devices do, and you may not know all the intricacies of the why behind the design, but you need to know how to make the design, bring the design to life, if you will. I thought it was interesting, Larry, that you mentioned, you kind of went as a programmer to a designer. Do you think that that is a natural evolution? Or is that just something that was right for you?
I think it was something that was right for me. It's odd in the higher ed realm. Most of the universities I've been to, they combine the programming and engineering role. And so if you're a design engineer for like IU, for instance, where I came from before I came here, all of their design engineers programmed, and you were expected to design the system and then follow the system all the way through to the handoff. And I think that's a really interesting way of doing it. But for the commercial space I was at, and that company was growing at the time, and they were growing so fast that they were having a hard time finding adequate people to staff. It's very similar to what we're doing now. And so in that instance, finding a programmer that understands equipment and system flow and everything else, it's easier to teach them how to, put it on a paper and sign it off then to people to go install than it would be to like bring a lead installer or something like that, because there's just that next level of knowledge about systems.
That's pretty neat. I like the idea of a designer doing programming because it kind of closes the loop. It probably makes you be a better designer. And James, you and I have talked too about like how do you get like what's the background that you need to be a good programmer, and to me, understanding signal flow and systems is probably as important as learning to write code.
Oh, agree. There's a lot that a programmer needs to know. They need to know single flow. They need to know the design. And nowadays, not even do we have to know, the commands to do hexadecimal, but now you're talking about network. So you got to know network topology and protocols on network. So yes, we need a little bit of everything. I see Larry has his hand up. Go ahead, Larry.
So this is an ongoing debate that I have, and we've discussed this on AV Super Friends multiple times, but I want to get the expert's opinion on this. We're just a bunch of hacks. We're not really programmers. So I've asked this question: is it easier to bring a programmer in and teach them AV, or bring an AV guy in and teach them how to program?
I'll let Steve handle this one first
So,
because I got my own thoughts.
So I'm a big fan of understanding AV, but you have to have a programmer's mind, and you have to be able to have a connection with writing code and being able to do that. The number one thing that I think is most important is being able to troubleshoot. If you could troubleshoot, then I think that you have the makings of being successful doing programming. If you can't troubleshoot, you're not going to be a successful programmer.
That's
Just
the
not going to
hardest
happen.
thing to teach. Like, I haven't been able to figure out how to effectively teach troubleshooting.
I real quick on the troubleshooting side, I want to say one, us programmers, and two, the technology has killed the art of troubleshooting. Because like just going into the IT realm of computers, used to be when a computer got, let's just say a simple virus, you spent time to clean that virus off. Now you hit a button to wipe it and reset it up and you're done. So that art of like going into registries and looking at all these directories is not there anymore because you don't need it. So I think we kind of shot our own foot there. But my feeling with the whole a programmer AV knowledge, I think it's easier to be a programmer and learn AV. And but again, you have to be a strong troubleshooter mind and you have to be a special breed. We talked about this before, Steve, where programmers are special breeds. So it is unique, I want to say. So it won't, there's people who won't follow this rule all the time. So but the story is from when I started programming AV systems, I went to a training class. I already was programming in AMX before going to AMX training class. And I'm sitting there in the programming one class. The guy sitting next to me worked for an integrator company. I don't know what company, I don't know his name, but he worked for an integrator company. When we had to go around and introduce ourselves, he introduced himself saying he was here to see if they can bring programming in-house instead of going through a third party to save money. The day of the exam, the last day of the training class, he walked in and goes, I already called, he's like, fail me now. I already called my boss, told him to pay programmers wherever the hell they want because this is too hard. So I turned to him, I'm like, how much you pay? Like, it was easy. Like, so I definitely think not just knowing AV, you're not going to know program, but having that troubleshooting mind and having that special mindset of a programmer will make a better programming in AV than someone going from AV into programming.
Okay,
The other
yeah, I
thing,
think I'm similar to what you're thinking, but I tend to fall on you find the special AV guy and then who can grasp it. And if you can find that magic scenario, they're going to have that troubleshooting, they're going to have the system flow, and then they're just learning how to do it. And that's my ideal scenario. It's just hard to find that person.
I mean, it's hard. I keep telling everyone, I came from your traditional IT. I mean, I wanted to be a network engineer. I did dabble in programming. I wrote application for the university. I have programming knowledge. And all of a sudden one day they're like, all right, James, you're no longer working for the help desk, telecommunication. You're now academic computing and you're going to do our AV programming. And I had no formal training on the AV program. They gave me source code and go, oh, we want to add microphones to this control, make it work. So funny enough was 5 years after I wrote that code, it was still working. And I go back to it and be like, what the hell was I doing? But yeah, it was, I definitely think, because I had that mindset of a programmer, the skill set, the troubleshooter, like that unicorn you're looking for, Larry. Even though I came from your traditional IT side, not AV side, I didn't know microphones at that time. I didn't know single flow in AV. I knew single flow in IT, which could correlate to the digital realm of AV. But so it was definitely a learning curve, the AV side for me, but not the programming side.
the one challenge that I would say with regard to somebody coming from traditional programming into AV is that it's basically you taking away a lot of their tools, and that could
Yeah.
create a lot of frustration. So if
Yeah.
they kind of feel like we're handcuffing them, and I feel like if you don't have the real passion for this industry and for what we do, I don't think that you're going to last long.
all the manufacturers have always tried to base their stuff on, IT standard code or programming languages, and it's always different enough that you just make the people who are used to the real thing very, very frustrated.
Yeah, no, they claim they're, oh, we're using Python or C
Yeah.
sharp or what. They're not. They're using their own thing. This is what my big pet peeve with AV industry in general. Get on the IT standard.
Yep.
Use true Python. Use true C sharp. Use this common language. Even your network protocols should be using standard protocols, not this. I can't take brand X and Y. I mean, think about this in the IT world. If I had a Dell computer and I wanted to talk to Larry who had an HP and that wouldn't happen, we will lose our mind. But we accept it in AV.
Yeah.
Why? Well, let's fix this. But sorry, that's a little tangent on mine.
No, it's a good tangent, and the industry is being absorbed by IT, and if we don't get on board quicker or sooner rather than later, you're going to have some major companies that do not survive the coming years.
100%. I've been saying that from day one, and no one wants to listen to me.
And just to give some context, because this could be listened at some future date, a lot of what we're talking about too, it results from the fact that we're sitting in a situation where it's difficult to get certain products. And when you're tied to brands that are exclusionary or that have walled gardens, as we tend to refer, you're kind of in a bad spot. And I think that we're going to be seeing some shifts to alleviate that in the future, which is, I think, are all good things. Change is not bad. Change is good.
Change is good, but in my history, AV folks don't like change.
No.
Yes, that is true. Well, that's probably a good place for us to wrap this one, but always a great conversation. And this is one that I'm sure we'll come back to. Larry, thank you so much for bringing up that question and for kind of leading the conversation there. How could people get in touch with you, learn more not only about your day job, but also about the AV SuperFriends podcast?
For the AV SuperFriends, it's LinkedIn or Twitter. On Twitter, it's at AV SuperFriends. And then for myself personally, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. And my Twitter handle is at LSDarling1.
Wonderful. Thank you. And James, how can people get in touch with you and know what you're up to? And if you have any, closing remarks that you wanted to share to put a bow on this one, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, put a bow on this one. Larry, thank you again. This was a great conversation. The AV Super Friends always have great discussion. They're very knowledgeable. So I do recommend the folks listening to this, go over and listen to AV Super Friends as well, because you're going to learn from those guys as well. As always, you can find me on Twitter, AV_James King, especially on Sunday morning with AV in the AM discussion. That's where Steve and I met. LinkedIn a little bit, not as active. I do write for the Higher Ed Digital Magazine, IT and AV column, HEPMA, anything with HEPMA. Again, Google me, you'll find me.
You guys are very involved in a lot of things, and I appreciate that. And that's what makes what we do so important. For me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. Do some writing for AV Network, Commercial Integrator, my company blog at controlconcepts.net, and also hosting the State of Control podcast on avnation.tv. So you can check that out too. And we certainly want to hear from our listeners. And thank you again, Larry, for being part of the show. We welcome guests. We want to keep the conversations lively, keep the topics pertinent. So please reach out to us and let us know what you think. We value your feedback, and we also want to include more voices on the show. You can hear this show on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as YouTube. And please reach out to us given all the methods that we mentioned. And with that, this has been Ask the Programmer.